Traverse City, like many other communities in Michigan, had its own script in 1933. At that time, Traverse City was in a very hard place. The unemployment rate in Michigan was 36%. Times were terrible, and people were scared. And people began to try to get their money out of the bank because they thought the banks were going to fail. They'd keep their money under the mattress, literally. And of course, what would that do to business? If no money is circulating, business goes down, and everything else does too. So this was a time of terrible anxiety, 1933. One source of information I used was this article from, get this, the Numismatist, copyright 1949, called Michigan Depression Script of the 1930s. And this tells you all the communities, has pictures of the script that was used in each community, and come to find out, practically every town of any size in Michigan had a script. And by the way, the word script, it's changed meanings. Well, I'll give you a formal definition, and this is what they say. Webster defines script as a certificate of indebtedness in the form of a promise to pay, issued to circulate in lieu of government currency. So it's a sort of IOU, in a way. That's the way I would look at it. Now, I read articles in the Record Eagle about script that was distributed in this town in the 30s, and I checked to see if our own History Center had some script, and they did. They had a $1 example of script. This script would be issued in denominations of 50 cents and $1. The city would issue $2,000 of script to begin with the possibility of more being printed in the future. Now, 2,000 doesn't sound like much, but you've got to remember there's a multiplier. $2,000 back then, you know, it would be equivalent probably now to 50,000, maybe $40,000 or $50,000. The city would issue $2,000 of script to begin with the possibility of more being printed in the future. Now get this, 150 unemployed men would receive $2 per day for script work, a sum that equates to about $32 per day in today's money. So in Traverse City, they didn't just issue script as a way of increasing the amount of money in circulation. They connected it to social welfare. They understood that unemployment was a serious problem here. And they thought, how can we give them some kind of work and at the same time give them money to support their family? Now, the third thing, workers would be paid in script for doing municipal work such as cleaning out the Borden River, restoring embankments along the river, and improving Clinch Park. And yeah, there were a lot of stories in the Record Eagle of just over here by the bridge, how they were pulling wagons from the 1890s out of that pool, and there were sunken logs, and they found all kinds of treasures that weren't worth anything, but they were a mess. And of course, some people in town would say, oh, that's just make work, you know, they aren't doing anything valuable. Well, I'd argue that. I'd say that the work they did had value. Yeah. Script will be treated as regular money by businesses that elect to participate. In the businesses that elected to participate, there were 98 of them. The city light and power.
Yay.
You could pay your electric bill with script. The city bookstore, that was a big one. They had a lot of customers. Bakeries, Earl's Jewelry Store, Ehrenberger Grocery, which was a big one. Grand Traverse Auto Company. If your car needed fixing, you could pay it with script. The Globe Department Store, which was downtown. Hamilton Clothing. Ideal Cleaners. Caselka's Grocery, Lyric Theater, the equivalent to the State Theater, would accept script. Milliken's, the fanciest department store in town. Olson's Grocery, Olson's would accept script. In fact, the title to my article, A Good Thing for the Community, that's a quote from Jerry Olson, who said, "We accept Traverse City script because we think it is a good thing for the community." This community in the 30s stood together. There wasn't the division that you see now between half the population thinking government's a terrible thing and half thinking that government's the answer to all our questions. Script was different back then because the business people supported it, the local leaders supported it, and that's why it was so successful. Yeah, there it is. FDR, right? $1. And signed by the city treasurer. Now, the way these were distributed, ultimately the merchants paid for it. In this way, script would be treated as regular money by businesses that elect to participate, and there were 100 of them. In an effort to ensure that script is circulated freely, a special 2-cent stamp is to be affixed to the back of each bill, initialed and dated by each participating business. A new stamp must be added every week. If a week is missed, 2 stamps must be affixed. There were 52 spaces for these stamps. Well, let's see, 52, and each one's worth 2 cents. It's $1.04. It took 4 cents to buy the stamps. Okay. Who paid for the stamps? The merchants that agreed to accept the money. So these 98 businesses, nearly 100 of them, they purchased the stamps. And now those workers who cleaned out the Boardman River, who were paid by the city in script, they would take the script to Olson's, let's say, they'd buy their groceries. Olson's would accept the script as payment. Then it's Olson's to pass on to their workers, or if they bought produce from a farmer that would accept the script, they would give it on to them. And eventually it would come back to another merchant, and that merchant would put a stamp on it, and it had to be exchanged every week. You see, the whole purpose was to get money flowing. People were hiding it under their mattresses, and that does not make for good business. So every week, the script would be passed on. And, you know, it's pretty clever. We tend to think that money is important because it's a way of storing wealth. But really, money's important only when it changes hands and from one person to another. That's emphasized in this little book on Michigan script, where the writer says, in all instances during a script regime, its acceptance by the public was the greatest obstacle to overcome. In each case, the public had to be educated to the fact that the real purpose of money is as a medium of exchange rather than as an end to itself. That's why I think script in this town was really quite successful. And at the end of the experiment, it lasted, I think 2 years. It was all retired. I think they had another issue of it, first 2000, then another 2000. At the end, they did stop it. And then they tried to evaluate, what did this do? Was this successful? And most people said yes, that this was a success. It did help out merchants, even though they paid for it. The city did not pay any money out. The city issued the script, but they didn't pay for it. So the city would pay workers in script and it would circulate. And finally, when this was all filled out, all 52 squares, the bearer could take it to the city treasurer and get $1 in U.S. credits. So because the merchants paid for the stamps that they ultimately paid for. How was script back then different from today? First was the severity of the economic trouble that we were in. They were in a terrible fix, and we think that our economy is in bad shape now. It was nothing compared to the 30s. The 30s was awful. Second, and I've already mentioned this, that the whole community decided they needed to do something to help out not only local business people, but the people that were unemployed. And so there was such wide participation in the script, local script. The only stores that did not participate were the chains that were here. A&P was not policy. Pennies, although the manager of the store was certainly sympathetic, wouldn't accept script. Montgomery boards wouldn't accept script. People were buying local anyway. I mean, they didn't get, produce from California at the grocery stores. They get potatoes from Cedar. And so we were pretty local in the 30s. And that really helped the acceptance of script because there weren't any Walmarts. There weren't any Lions. Okay, and that really helped us out. And then last was the fact that the population as a whole stood together. And I believe this was a compassionate response of our community towards solving this awful problem. And gosh, I wish right now we had that same kind of togetherness that they felt back then. And I can't believe I spent my whole life sort of despising economics. I was interested in science. To be honest, I love ferns more than I love dollars and money. But I found out that money is fascinating. And it really makes, in a sense, it makes our economy move forward and makes things happen. So don't despise it as I always did. Kind of take time to study it. It's an interesting subject.